All right, and we are live. And hopefully Justin has unmuted his mic. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
Together,
I've unmuted my mic.
Oh, it appears to be the case. Together, we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
Well, not only that, but we founded the company, so I guess that makes us pretty important.
Oh, wow, you made that line worse.
Anyway, I guess that makes us pretty important. We'll workshop it some more.
This is why the show. Anyway, we will be your host this episode and every episode.
Unless we're not.
That sounds true.
Today is our 7th episode.
And again, hopefully it is not our last, although after that, I don't know.
Why would it be our last?
Well, as always, we could get canceled.
Why would we get canceled?
Well, we might put a fake code on the screen.
Ooh, that would make people really mad.
Okay, well, we won't do that then. It's definitely not a fake code.
Okay, good idea.
Okay,
yep. We are here to answer your development and design questions, specifically on Untitled Champions. But if you ask us about some of our other games, we could possibly answer those as well.
You know, I don't think anyone's actually taken us up on that.
I saw one question one time and I didn't know the answer to it, and so I didn't bring it up on stream.
Well, maybe you can answer those questions if you go on the Bushwhacker stream.
We'll see.
Anyway, if you don't ask any questions, you might have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.
Oh, Misa, do my best.
I hope you get eaten by a bigger fish.
So as usual, we don't have an update section anymore, even though we still have it here in the script. Everything that's important and happening in the game you can find on our social media or the changelog in game.
Justin, we screwed up.
What did we do?
We promised them a Modron chest this week.
Did we?
We did.
Uh-oh. Okay, well, don't worry. That's not a real code. We'll find a real code and give you one of those. Anyway, we've got some questions from last week, Dave. Why don't you go over that while I give directions?
Oh, sure. What do we got here? So the first question, if you're given directions, we're going to follow up on at least 2 questions from last week that are follow-ups, and we got 3 that are left over. One question that was asked last week that we promised to take a look at, and that was that it was a question from Spiffy Man, and Spiffy Man was asking, did you know the iOS familiar box can't be closed unless you open another window? And it's just like the jukebox or different additional party screens. Any chance we can get a fix? So I took a look at that, and there is actually a little bit of an idiosyncrasy with the familiar box, and that is that if you tap anywhere above it, it closes, and if you tap below it, it does not. And when we were talking about this before the show, I was trying to figure out exactly what the logic had been on that, because I know I had put that together at this point almost 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and I couldn't remember exactly why I decided to make it work that way. So certainly we can put that on the list of things to adjust, but for now, if anyone's having trouble closing the iOS familiar box, or just the familiar box in general, you need to click above the box, not below the box, and it will close just like any other window. Cool. We had another question here for you, Justin, if you're ready.
I am ready. I have given marching orders.
Okay, and that is a design question from Ironuk, and their question was, are there any plans to make speed champions affect background parties? Would make it much more pleasant to grind things out in the background if you're not using those speed champions in the foreground.
Oh, you're going to give this one to me? Sure. I can answer this one. Yeah, so Dave and I were actually just talking about this because we were looking at this question, and we were talking about this before we came on stream. And I think one of the challenges with this is it's just really, really hard to do this with the way that Modron automation kind of works and multi-party works in the background. Is the background parties aren't actually processing the whole shebang. They're skipping levels, they're skipping monsters, they're just trying to be really, really efficient. And so a lot of the ways that speed abilities work don't really work very well with that, because for example, if you have to hit a bunch of monsters in order to get a speed ability, or when you kill a monster it has a % chance to do a speed ability, it doesn't really work well if you're skipping a lot of those steps. And so we were trying to figure out kind of what a good kind of compromise would be, and I think it might be possible to kind of give speed champs like a modifier or something that just kind of applies a flat bonus to how fast background parties go. But I think it's something that we have to kind of discuss more and figure out what that would be like.
Yeah, because I know one of the ways that the background doesn't, or the background can process quickly through so many levels is that it can jump ahead 5 levels, check to see what your DPS is there, if you're still killing monsters there, and if you are, jump ahead another 5 levels and check to see if you're still killing monsters there, and then jump ahead another 5 levels, and when it hits one that you can't beat, then it sort of narrows in on it and goes backwards. And so unfortunately that means those in-between levels aren't simulated, and if they're not simulated, then sort of those random occurrences don't have an opportunity to occur. And so it makes it very difficult for basically any champion, not just speed champions, that have abilities that are triggered by, that are procced by certain things that happen during the areas. So, so it's not an exact replication, unfortunately. Cool. All right. There's another one here at the top, Justin, that I gave you a hard time for last time. And you were going to follow up on this. And this was a question from Garwar asking about the item level refunds that have caps.
Yes. So funnily enough, after this question came in and after I said I would follow up on it, I'm not sure if Chris brought it up or if I brought it up with him, but it is something that we're now kind of escalating a little bit, and I think we're going to try and have some movement on this in the next little while. I think I explained last time that one of the reasons we're kind of hesitant to do it was because we're not necessarily sure if those cooldown effects are going to stick around forever. And if we might do a rebalance of just items in general to not have those types of effects anymore. And if we did that, then we wouldn't necessarily want to have moved all your hard-earned item levels off of that and over onto something else. So yeah, it's something that we're really thinking about doing because the item level thing, or the other thing of rebalancing the items, sounds like a whole lot of oh, puppy. Puppy. Yeah, did I answer your question? Or I think I got distracted by the puppy, but we will continue to look into that.
Okay. All right. We got another one here from the Sifu, and they're asking if in regards to the gold chest epic pity timers, it's hard to keep track of these, and I wanted to know if there was possible to put this information on the time gate selection screen so that when you're selecting a character for that you know you're picking one that has an upcoming guaranteed epic item.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good thing to include. The question that we had when we were talking about this before was sort of how do we fit it on there? Because the time gate selection screen is already very, very complicated, and there's lots of different bits and pieces. So it's we agree it would be really good to put it on there, but we need to find a good way to put it on there that's not going to just create more clutter on that screen. And then I've got one here for you, Dave. If you want to answer this one here. This is another question, our final question from last week that we pulled forward. This is from Herkwork, and they asked if have you considered skipping a couple of new hero releases to get more time for polish? There's a lot of basic bugs that exist right now. It would be nice if you had time to clean things up.
All right.
What do you think, Dave?
Sorry, I was just adding the "It's a Real" code to the display output there. I should have both. Oh wait, no, this needs to be weekly codes.
There you go.
There we go. Perfect.
Look at this sweet Twitch action. This is why we haven't been canceled yet. It's because we are always
extra
on
code.
it.
We're just going to give extra codes out. It'll be fine.
Bribes. Anyway, yes, about all those bugs.
Yes. So the question actually on that was, so have we considered skipping hero releases to get more polish in? And the answer on that one is because hero releases are basically so critically timed to all of the, like they're tied deeply into the events, and every new event has a new hero. And so we can't we can't. It'd be very difficult to put out an event with no new hero, and we really would prefer not to skip any of the events. That said, what really ends up being the actual development of the new champions is something we've got pretty streamlined. And currently, I think we mentioned this last time, but our current pipeline on that has one developer managing to be able to handle the current full development of the champion through, because it's not just the development that's on that. I mean, there's the design, and then the art, and then the actual implementation, and so it's a pretty well put together pipeline. But the major new features are what end up taking a lot of the development time. And so as we've mentioned before, there's a multiplayer feature that is upcoming, and it is something that we started working on back in January. It's been a long time coming at this point, and it is the thing that's been eating up a significant amount of development time. And I think, as Justin pointed out, we sort of teased it, and we were suggesting that we might give some kind of additional teasers for it before the release, and then we pulled that all back because we didn't actually get it to the state that we were comfortable sharing with people yet. That's continuing to eat up development time. But that said, that is something that we're aware of, and we have, in fact, we've actually added an additional person to the team who's been working with the localization features, but they're going to be on bugs once that's complete. And we also have another set of developer interviews that are ongoing right now to get that very list of bugs chewed down on. So it's a long process, but it should have some dedicated developer time on it upcoming. So, of course, there's some bugs in that list that have been there forever. I was just mentioning this the other day. There's a rare case where your champions disappear after you come back from switching between parties, and while we have attempted to get that for basically the last year, I think we have not been able to put our finger on what causes that. So that's a fun one. Yeah. Okay. Let's move into today's questions.
Questions from this week. Excellent.
Perfect. Let's start with something super easy. Happy Lerper would like to know, Justin, did you get a haircut?
I did not get a haircut, but what is different about this week is, while I look like I'm in the same tavern that I'm always hanging out in, I'm actually from home, joining this from home instead of from the office today, because pipes that leak are bad, and we had one of those, and so I'm here to berate all the people and make sure they fix my house. So I did not get a haircut, I don't think, since the last one, but I am on a different camera, so that could very well be what it is.
Yeah, you got a little shimmer around you because of the background replacement.
That's probably it. The real question is, when is Dave going to get a haircut?
That was a foolish mistake back at the beginning of the pandemic, before when everything first locked down. They first reopened the hairdressers, but they required face shields and masks and all that fun stuff that we've all now gotten used to. But at the time, it was something that's like, oh no, that'll pass, it'll be fine, I'll just wait till it's over. I can do that. And now it's just been a long running joke on that I'm going to get my haircut as soon as I can get it without a mask.
Like
anyway.
a playoff beard, except the playoffs are lasting a year and a half.
I didn't think that was going to happen. Anyway, moving on to the next question. We got one here from Biocron, and they would like to know, have you considered increasing the number of active feats per champion to 3 or more?
Yes, we have. Right now you can only get, I believe, 2 feats per champion, because they unlock at certain levels. But one of the original things we wanted to do with the feat system was have some sort of special way on a per champion basis that you could unlock additional feat slots. So not promising anything, we don't have anything locked in the design, but absolutely we want to do that, and we want to do that in such a way that you kind of pick and choose which champions get that 3rd feat, and have it be a real accomplishment to really get that for all of your main champions, and especially to get that for all of your champions would be a big accomplishment. So absolutely, yes, we have considered that. Let's do a question for you, Dave, since I feel like I've been answering all of them.
No worries.
We got one here from, you're just picking them based on how hard the names are to pronounce, right?
Always.
From Ezkine, wants to know, or says, one of the best things in Idle Champions is the in-game chat, but it goes down every Sunday and returns on Wednesday or Thursday. Is there a plan to fix it so it's reliable all week? Maybe we should have Peter on here sometime.
So that is definitely... It should definitely not be going down on Sunday and being offline for several days. There is an ongoing issue in the chat. I know Peter has been looking at trying to get it, or trying to do an automated reset of the chat. And the issue with the chat is that after it's been open for a long enough period of time, for some reason it stops allowing new connections to join it. And it is something that's been an ongoing issue. It's more impacted the more active players there are, which is something that more recently had spiked. And so we have seen a more increase, a decreased time between how long the chat was holding up. But I know it's something that Peter was looking at. I guess it's like I say, I think his interim solution is to have it restart, say at like midnight every day. But long term, we wanted to actually just rewrite that chat with using some different newer tech, because the chat server is something that that particular chat server, I think, was written just before we did Idle Champions, but it was a variation on some of the older server tech that we'd used for Shards of Titan.
Yeah.
So I know it needs a careful look at, and as sort of alluded to in the earlier questions, is that development time is triaged out sometimes, and chat isn't often top of the list for that. Okay. Let's have a question here from wait for it some. Okay. Oh, never mind. I get it. It's like How I Met Your Mother. Get it? Wait for it some. Yep. Do you guys plan to make more neutral and evil-sided campaigns and content? We have evil and neutral champs, but they are forced to participate on the good side, even in the Avernus campaign.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I was thinking about Dupuis when I highlighted this. I was like, I wonder how he kind of thinks about handling this, because I actually don't know how he kind of approaches this, because it's a really hard thing to do. Because obviously the campaigns are these big, massive things with 16 to 20 unique adventures, and I think it's really hard to kind of balance those between sort of good champions and your kind of neutral and evil champions. And you also see that a lot of like the D&D streams and other stuff like that, it's almost always like good and the very least neutral characters like that. I think I can count on one hand sort of the number of tabletop streamed tabletop games where it's evil characters doing evil things trying to make the evil people win. So I think that's why we kind of go in that direction of good in general. And I would say it would be pretty cool to do like an all evil campaign where everyone's trying to cause as much chaos as possible. But it feels to me that would just be a real challenge.
Players may find that it didn't really suit them, like the drunk party goers who were being murdered during.
Yes, I mean, you get into some real tasteless situations when you start to get evil. I know that Archon, obviously, he's involved in a lot of stuff, and he's trying to bring Tiamat back and all that stuff. But I think they try to kind of give him a role even in the good side of the Avernus campaign. So I think it still works to a degree, but it's definitely a tough, a narrow rope to traverse.
Yeah, it's not, and it's also not really super common content even in terms of like just normal media, right? Like, can you think of a television show where the main character is evil? I'm sure there is one. It's just less. Anyway, I mean, that's really an aside, but okay.
Depends on your point of view, I guess. I mean,
everyone's
is really evil to those poor people on that planet, and he refused to save them because of the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
So evil.
Right. Someone's pointing out in the chat, they're saying Dexter or Antihero. I don't know that Dexter is evil per se. He's just misunderstood and ambitious. Wait.
Well, maybe we could have a misunderstood and ambitious characters campaign then.
Oh, someone else is saying Breaking Bad. That's true. I guess you know what it is? They're presented as if they're good. And they're not necessarily...
You have to have a sympathetic protagonist,
true.
right?
Yeah,
and
true.
so even if they're evil, they have to be going, they have to be doing something for a reason that people can sympathize with.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Anyway,
Yeah.
That was David and Justin's TV review.
Yeah. That one's getting canceled. Garwar asks, how hard would it be to move back the line at which enemies stop moving forward and start attacking your champions so that we have a clearer view of the front line?
Yeah, I highlighted this one because actually this is something that I went and did some manual work on one time, because you can actually, the game allows us to adjust how far away a monster kind of stops. But it's on a per monster basis, because monsters are all different widths, right? If you've got, like, for example, like an orc war wagon that's like this wide on the screen versus an imp that's like this wide on the screen, you don't want them to both stop at exactly the same spot. And so we have some manual adjustments that we can do there. And at one point I went through and sort of was playing through a bunch of campaigns and went through and manually adjusted where all the guys were stopping so that they all kind of lined up nicely and left a bit of room for the tanks and whatnot. But it's actually quite an arduous thing to go through and do. So it's a little bit lower on the priority list of, especially with all of the catch up we would have to do on it to make sure everything was lined up. So it's not as simple as just moving the line back, because of the fact that enemies are all different sizes, and what looks good for one enemy, a certain width would not look good necessarily for another enemy. I don't know if maybe there's a way we could automate that and kind of detect the width of the characters, but then you get into things where it's like, oh, well, their walking animation has them this wide, but when they attack, it's this wide, and so which of those do you use? And this is one of the complexities of video game design and implementation. So I guess the short answer to that question is it's not as simple as it seems like it should be.
Okay. It's close enough.
Let's see. Here's another question for you, Dave, from OG17. No, OG, not 17. OG17. It says, question, there's one version number that's like 1.39.9, and there's one that's like V389. The bug tracker will say a report's been fixed using the V format, and up until a couple of months ago, the game's changelog showed both formats. It would show the first one with the dots and then the V number afterwards. Now it only shows the one with the dots, so we can't really tell if a fix is not working or just not live. Could the changelog be updated to include both formats again?
Well, geez, who did that?
Well, I stopped updating the changelog a few months ago.
So
there might be a coincidental combination there.
Yeah, because the 1.39.9 version is the changelog version number, and the V389 is the build number.
Yeah.
And so, certainly the build number is the important one there for checking to see if something's fixed in it. So it should definitely be included. So we will bring that up. I think Peter's probably the one been doing that. So
I assume so. Yeah, it's a pretty trivial thing to do. It's a little bit more challenging these days because of all the platforms we're on, and sometimes we'll release an update on one platform. We'll release a client update on all the platforms except for a couple, but then we'll release the data update, which actually contains the meat of the actual update on all platforms. And so we'll have cases where you'll have version 1.40 as the actual changelog versions live on all platforms, but the actual client version on some platforms might be a different number. So it is a little bit of a challenge there, and it's not going to be perfect without a large overhaul of how that works, but it's something that we can definitely, I think it's not that hard to just put those numbers back in, even if they're pretty close.
Right. One thing I'm seeing in the chat, they're talking about the question you answered for Garwar. I wonder if it's just in general, they're looking for just a slight move back of just everything so that they can see things more clearly. Maybe that's the Certainly on a per monster basis that could be complicated, but on a just like, hey, the actual across the board, there's an extra, 10, 15 pixels. Certainly that wouldn't be difficult to do, but the question then becomes, does it start to look weird that they're attacking potentially air?
Yeah, I mean that's why my preferred way of addressing the situation would be to manually adjust each monster so that it's positioned correctly. And maybe that the answer to that is just a tool of some sort that we can use to very quickly do that. But it's adjusting the positioner. I'm seeing they're also saying, just have the health be in front of everything, and I know that's a request we've gotten since the beginning of time, essentially. I mean that's not as easy as we'd like to think it should be as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not the end of the world, though. Where the way it's set up there, I guess, is sort of that's where we often end up landing on that. Is sort of like, well, it'd be nicer if it was slightly clearer, but at the end of the day, it's not super impactful. At least that was my sort of takeaway from it, was that you shouldn't be in a situation where you're really so tight to that, being able to see the moment your tank's health hits a certain spot. But I might be in the minority on that position.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's it's also about how the game started and then how the game has evolved too. Because initially we were much more like it's an idle game, and in an idle game, it's really just about the numbers. And if the numbers don't match up, then you're going to wipe, and if they do match up, then you're fine. And I think a lot of the more kind of active abilities and the more kind of abilities that that are more reactive have changed a little bit, so that it's much less idle. It's much more about, oh, I should do this thing now, and be very reactive to it.
Right.
So, yeah. Also, I saw a wild Dexter in the background there. Look at that.
Hiding in his office. All right.
Everyone's just getting a look into the office today.
Next question here. We've got a tech question from Donut Mind Me. And they would like to know, I was told those Icewind variants where all the patrons had the same area for completion was a mistake. Will that be corrected? Or is it now set in stone that it's been 6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I highlighted this question, not to throw Peter under the bus again, but this should have been corrected 6 weeks ago, as soon as it was initially found. And I'm actually quite surprised that it wasn't just
So we're going to fix it and not grandfather it in, right?
Well, I guess that's the challenge now that it's been 6 weeks, now that people have, a whole bunch more people have done them. So I'm going to highlight this one in yellow so that we can talk about that with Peter and see if we can come up with some sort of solution that doesn't rob people of their patron favor and currency.
Okay. The next question here from Star Chaser 43. They'd like to know if there's a template of rough levels and types and upgrades that you use when developing new characters. If so, who uses it? For example, you or Chris or...
Yeah, so the simple answer to this question is yes, there is a template that we use, and I'm the one that uses it because I'm the one that does, in general, all the balance on the champions. So yeah, we've got basically a spreadsheet that reads in their upgrades and their level cost or their gold costs, and sort of assumes the level at which they will be when they've or the amount of gold required to get to certain levels, and then the power that they should be at those levels. And then I basically just go through and add upgrades in until everything in the spreadsheet turns green, but not too green. Gets too green, then they might be a little bit OP. But as always, it is just an estimation because of, like we've said, there's all of these sort of factors in the game now that weren't in the game when we first released. So even the things that kind of activate when monsters attack you, or activate randomly, or activate when there's a certain number of monsters on the screen, it can be pretty hard to balance for those in a spreadsheet, because you have to kind of special case each one. So we kind of just use a little bit of intuition when it comes to how powerful is X going to be and how powerful is Y going to be. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes it needs to take two.
Sometimes it does.
So I see a question actually I missed at the beginning there. Actually, it was the very first question, and I'm not sure why I didn't highlight it. But if you want to ask me
Sure.
that one, let's go there.
Here's a question from Babilly G 2000. Says, regarding the game crashes that some of us are experiencing, from what I understand, that Windows 10 and Unity do not play nice together. Do you know if there are any fixes for this? Congregate or cartridge on Kong crashes in under an hour now for me. Ooh, that's not good.
Interesting. So, so there's a couple of pieces on this one. I would say, and one is, to my knowledge, there isn't any issue between Windows 10 and Unity. I mean, pretty much we've been using Windows 10 for as long as we've been using Unity. The question here, I think, if the game is crashing, usually like the biggest issue for us for seeing crashes is tends to be a memory leak related, and these tend to occur when we introduce new champions or new features, and someone misses something in setting up the effect or sets up something that over a long period of time causes the memory to build up, and then when it hits the limit, the game closes. And I think the cartridge build, I think actually all the Windows builds other than the Epic one are still 32-bit, and that means that you're sort of limited once you get over, I think it hits 2 gigs and it kills it, although it should be theoretically able to go further than that, but I think 2 is about the point where it goes down. And so someone really needs to do a pass on the memory usage for that. Again, it is something that we do on a regular basis, something that sit down and let it run at with the game set to the highest speed possible, and then watch the heap and see if there's anything that's building up, and then after a long enough period of time, usually it becomes evident that there's something there, if there is something there. So it sounds like if you're having under an hour crash, that's likely related to something like that. And it is something that, as I say, we do on a regular basis, but we haven't done probably in at least the last 6 to 8 months. So someone needs to sit down and get that done. Usually running their game off a laptop on the side of their desk while they're doing other work, just to let it build up. So that's something that we should flag to do a pass on, just because, like I say, I think it hasn't been done in about 6 to 8 months. And it definitely does seem that we risk that. We do introduce these things sometimes and then don't catch them until later. And it's usually with a new champion or a new feature that ends up happening. So I'm going to flag that for Peter. I think actually he mentioned a few weeks ago that he'd been hoping to do a pass, but hadn't gotten to it yet. So I don't think it's specifically a Windows 10 or Unity issue. It's likely an us issue. And so there wouldn't be any specific fixes for it other than for us to dig in and see what's going on there. Yeah.
Cool.
So we will.
I've got another question here that I've highlighted for both of us. Well, actually, I've highlighted it in yellow for some reason. I meant to highlight it in purple. There we go. It's from Hollow Leviathan, and they're asking if formation saves can remember feats as well. And this is actually kind of an interesting question, because there's basically 2 main things that formation saves don't remember, and that's they don't remember feats, and they don't remember necessarily specialization choices. And
they do. They remember specialization choices.
Well, only in certain situations.
Yeah. Well, they only apply them if you're using a Modron core.
Is that actually how that works?
Yep.
Because I'm curious about that, because it seemed like it changed a couple of times during development. I'm not actually sure where it ended up.
So you might.
I thought this was an interesting thing to talk about.
So you're probably thinking about there was a section of time while we were setting up the Modron code where I set the formations to remember the feats you'd previously, or not the feats, the specialization choices you'd previously made, and then it would automatically apply those if you didn't select one in a given enough time. So I think I had it set up so the dialog had a little bar that it would pop up, and then it would fill across, and then it would auto select the previous one. And then I think the design decision around that was that we didn't want that feature was going to be part of Modron. It was going to be something you had to have the Modron automation doing for you. It wasn't going to be just automatically built into that dialog. And so we pulled that out and made it the Modron one. I don't exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question about sort of what should formation saves remember? How much manual work should there be to if you want to swap feats between champions, or swap swap specializations based on like your formations and whatnot. It's a really interesting question. I think we've discussed this internally a couple of times, like what works out best. But I think it's a good thing to think about and think about what we can do to make that work well, but also be just within the bounds of kind of what we want to provide to players in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we could easily put the feats into the Modron automation portion. That wouldn't be offside with the current design direction. But just in general, having them remember that, if the idea was that the Modrons are giving you that ability, it's not just a built-in ability, that it's an ability you have to unlock, then I'm not sure it would make sense to just default that in the main one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I've got another question for you here. This actually is very similar. This one that you've highlighted, Q13, is very similar to
I think it probably came from
the one from last.
The discussion from the above, yeah.
Sure, I mean, we can discuss this then. I can set this then. This is from Night Sky 01, and they're asking, do parties running in the background actually run at different speeds? In my experience, Team 3 runs much slower in the background than Teams 1 or 2, although I can't remember if I had partial, full, or no familiars when I noticed the speed disparity.
Right. So the different parties are all running, like they're all running the same system. They don't have any. There's no difference between the parties in terms of speed, in terms of like actually, like they're not designed to be different. They don't. And to my knowledge, there's not some odd, bug that makes the second automation party run slower than the first automation party. The only or first background party, slower background party. The only difference is between background parties and active parties. And it's for the aforementioned abilities that get procced and speed champion additional abilities that make your foreground party going to be sort of running at the most optimal speed rather than the background ones, which are guessing at some of that. And as mentioned before, they're leaving out some of the speed champion abilities. And I imagine a bunch of other abilities too that would trigger. So
yeah, I think it hits, like it does do like a somewhat live simulation. So I know some abilities certainly get used, like anything that happens when like enemies stack up on a tank, that would get enabled if your party isn't doing enough damage that monsters actually get to your tank. So some of that stuff certainly activates, but the speed stuff is really, I don't think it has any effect, because what we end up doing is just kind of detecting if you can beat an area, then we will just get you through that area in a fixed amount of time, times any speed potions that are going, I think.
Yeah, the speed potions apply for sure.
So I think that's the main reason that speed stuff doesn't work. Actually, thinking about it more is just because we have a fixed progress rate that doesn't take any of that stuff into account.
Yeah, and it definitely gets super complicated.
Very, very complicated.
All right. Question 12, which is tagged yellow. I don't know if that one's for you, Justin.
I flagged it yellow because it reminded me that we were asked this like either last episode or the episode before, and we mentioned that we would try and make it happen, and then I haven't yet. So I flagged it as I should probably go do this. But if you want to,
sure.
if you want to bring it up again to let people know that it's on my mind.
Yeah, Emote is asking about if we can please let us use more than 10 contracts at a time, and before the next event.
When's the next event? It's next week, right? We're not mid-event right now. Yes. You maybe. We might be able to make that happen. I've got it highlighted in, oops, I left the window. I've got it highlighted in yellow, and yellow is the highlight for after this is over, we're going to go find someone and assign them things that are in yellow. So we will certainly try to get this out. It's tough because of our build cadence these days. We're not necessarily doing builds like right before the event goes out like we used to back in the day. So we'll have to see when we can fit that in, but we'll definitely try.
I see a comment in the chat saying they second more than 10 contracts, but not too many more because they don't want to have an oopsie.
Right? I mean, that we talked about this the last time we were discussing this particular this thing, right? Is some of the things that are in place to kind of slow people down or that seem annoying are actually there because we don't want you to have a really bad experience.
It's true, and we don't want Sean to have a really bad experience.
Well, if you have a really bad experience, you'll probably let Sean know about it, and then you'll have a really bad experience trying to rectify it all. So, so yeah, I don't think we'll go. I don't think we'll go nuts with letting you use more contracts, but certainly we can probably look at more than 10, and we might be able to make it a sliding scale based on the size of the contract as well.
Right. Okay. So here's a question that I second, Justin. Why don't we have a Modron champion?
Yeah, so you know what? It's a question from Optimus SE here.
Yep.
Who asked if a Modron champion is in the works or if we would consider one. And at one point, I think we did have a Modron champion that we were looking at designing, but I don't think we found a spot to slot them in. And at one point, I wanted to. Who was it? It was one of the. Yeah, there was someone's champion who was a robot or something, and I wanted. It was Anna's champion, who we always mispronounce because it's like Evelyn, or Evelyn. Or
one of them's
whichever
a robot,
one of
the other
those
one's
is
not, right?
evil. Yes. Well, one of them's evil. One of them's the evil one. Anyway, we wanted to do like a Modron skin for hers, but we didn't. So I think right now there's no Modron champion in the works. I think the best we can do is I think there's a couple of adventures where you get to escort. What's like Nordom or something? Looking at chat here. Yes, Nordom. I think he's an escort in a couple of adventures. So I think that's the closest we'll get at this point. But who knows? I mean, we've got years and years and years and years worth of champions still to go. So it could happen.
Okay.
I got some questions here for you, Dave.
I'm bluing them all up. Go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Busy.
Here's one from Tabinya. Who asks, why can you not place champions during the journal dialogue, although leveling up is still able to be done?
That is a very good question. In fact, there's a reason I flagged that. I was like, is that a thing that people have tried to do?
You also can't click distractions through the journal dialogue.
But you can level up.
I guess so.
That's curious. I didn't realize that you could do anything during the journal dialogue.
I wonder if you can pull them out, but then you just can't drop them down because there's like a blocker or something over just the game screen area.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is I actually don't know why you can't. I just don't know why you can level them up. Would be actually the answer. I think I would have assumed the journal was actually blocking everything, not just the placement. I don't know. What would that be a desired behavior? What do you think, Justin? Is that?
I don't necessarily know that it's completely necessary that you not be able to do stuff during that. Like certainly, Hollow Leviathan in chat there is saying that not being able to click distractions through the journal has made me sad a few times, and I absolutely agree with that. It has made me sad a couple of times as well. I'm like, it's a fast crow, I could get it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's something.
I mean, do we use clicking on the background to stuck up the journal text? Is that why that's happening? Or are you stuck? Yeah, I kind of. We would have to take a look at that.
We changed the journal text. There's like a speed option for the journal text, right? That you can do. But I don't know that clicking actually.
We can look at that.
Might make it go to the next one. It probably makes it go to the next one. If you've got it on the slowest possible speed, I think clicking makes the next one appear.
Yeah.
And we put that in for people who are streaming and
it's
reading.
likely that whatever layer is detecting that click is blocking the clicks through to anything underneath. That's likely what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my guess as well.
So it would be kind of tricky to be able to do both, but
we'd have to like put the click region for that. Like it'd have to be a more specific click region, I think. And then even then, at certain resolutions, it would certainly overlap with where the formation is.
Yeah, I mean, we could globally track that, but then when they go to level up their button, it would skip forward to the next text if they were leveling up the champions.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
That's an
Okay.
interesting question. Thanks for that question. Here's another one for you from Plius Info, who would like to know, is there an option to disable all the damage numbers on the screen?
So I flagged this question actually because I thought there were two. I was actually curious if Plius Info is still in the chat. If what the reason, like what the goal was for that. Like, is this just that that's distracting and you don't want to see it, or is there some concern that it's impacting performance, or that yeah, so I guess the question is sort of what's the, like, there is this, I guess the answer is there isn't currently an option to do that. But if we were to consider putting an option to that, the question would be what the purpose of it was, and if there was maybe another way to achieve that, like for example, if it was a performance issue or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see if Plius is still in chat.
Nope,
and
they did.
Oh, here we
And
go.
it's
performance.
Performance and he doesn't. Both of them.
Oh, both.
Both.
Oh, we didn't get both. Wasn't an option. Please choose one.
Yeah, I mean, it may have some minor impact on performance for sure if there's 100 enemies on the screen and you're hitting them all at once. I know that the text processing there is actually a little bit expensive. I think mainly because it's formatting all those big numbers can be an intense process. Anyway, yeah, we can consider that for sure. Just we'd want to make sure that it was something that was obvious you'd turned off. Otherwise, that's going to be that one ring problem again.
Yes, if you were here in our last one, we were talking about a bug, or not a bug.
It's not a bug.
A feature
trinket
in Bushwhacker 2, which is one of our games from, well, it's been out for 8 or 9 years now. That you could put on a trinket that made your character invisible. And after we released that, we would get tickets from players who were like, "My character's disappeared, help!" And it was always because they'd accidentally equipped the one ring.
Oh, they'd purposely done it and then forgotten. Come back a couple of weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah. Always the funniest tickets to respond to.
All right. I got a question here for you, Justin, from Theander. And Theander would like to know, is it possible to add character alignment info to the screen that pops up when you hover over the picture and the hero roster on the bottom of the screen? Shows name, gender, role, but no alignment. Why not?
Yeah, why not? I agree. Why not? I think it is possible to do that. It's another one of those things where you have to look at what space is available. But I absolutely think it should be there because it's becoming more and more important as we release more champions and more restrictions on alignment, and I think there's probably going to be even more of that in the future. So definitely something that we can look into adding there, and thus it has been highlighted in yellow. Got another question for you here, Dave.
Have at her.
This is a question. We got about 10 minutes left, so a few more questions in here. I think we're doing a good job of getting through them all today. Question, where did it go? Here it is. From Joe Mallow. Asks, can we have a way to rebind hotkeys? I like the F1 to F12 to level champions, but F12 automatically takes screenshots for Steam. You don't like having a screenshot every time you level Zorbu?
I partially highlighted that because I thought it was funny. Because that's what's happening. It's just filling up your screenshot folder.
I think we should make F1 bring up the FAQ or something as well, just like good old days.
So it levels up the first champion and brings up the FAQ?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every time you level up Bruno, you want to learn how to play the game again.
Right. I mean, I think the answer is we're not likely to add a way to rebind hotkeys anytime soon, just because that actually would have to be a significant amount of UI work to make an interface for putting that together. But I do think we should change something so that it doesn't take a screenshot when you hit F12. I wonder if that's something we can tag in Steam, or if we need to actually just change the hotkeys for that. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. We should flag that to have it looked into, because it definitely shouldn't we don't need it taking a screenshot. I mean, I think maybe a workaround for that right now is, I bet you Steam lets you rebind it, but I recognize that's not the ideal solution for something like that. We shouldn't have it running dual purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. And here we go, Justin. Empty Eye would like to know, why is this game so addicting? It says it's my significant other's question. They're watching me.
That's a good question.
Watching with me, not watching me. Sorry.
They're watching me. That's a good question. I mean, I think everyone has kind of a different feeling on this, and I think it's different for different people as well. Like for me, I love these kind of games because it's mainly about it's about two parts. It's about the collecting all the champions, collecting all the gear, getting all the best stuff, and then also just the puzzle aspect of trying to figure out how to squeeze a little bit more damage out of my formation. So I mean, those are the two things that I find to be really enticing and really give it that kind of one more turn feel that you get from like the Civilization games when you're like, okay, I'm gonna log off, but just one more thing. Oh, now I'm just gonna reset. Now I'm just gonna level up. I'm gonna get my guys up to max level in this adventure. Oh, now I'm gonna do this. Now I'm gonna do that. And so I think it's a real combination of issues, or not issues, things.
Justin.
A combination of things in the game that make it that way. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading the chat there while you were answering that. So did you mention the exponential number growth as part of why that's also something?
I did not mention the no.
Because that's one of the big things with idle games is that they have this very surprising feature to them. I don't say surprising, but like as a person, you look at numbers and you expect them to go, 1, then 2, then 4, whatever. You expect things to grow linearly rather. And when you have things
3,
that grow,
4.
Yeah, when you have things that grow exponentially, it catches your interest. It's I know Eric had a whole bunch of psychology stuff on that was found quite fascinating, because it's this, when you jump from 1 to 100 to 1,000 to 1,000,000, you really feel like you're making this big jumps in progress, and that keeps you thinking, oh, and if I just play a little bit longer, I'll make another big jump. And they're numbers that are it's more of a novel response to it, and so it's exciting when you go up that much, rather than going from level 1 or going from level 10 to 11 is a small jump, but going from 1 to 100 is a big exciting jump that for some whatever reason as humans we look at that and we're like, oh, that's really great, next, and yeah, so
yeah,
that's a big part of it.
There's a question actually further up here that someone in chat reminded me that I had looked at, and I was like, maybe Dave will highlight that one and we can ask him. But
shoot, go for it.
I will highlight it for you. Hollow Leviathan asks, why does manually leveling up with the +100 setting not automatically apply upgrades?
That's a different.
I feel like it should.
Good question.
It's further up
lost
here.
Where you were at. All right. Yes.
Question 11.
Plus, not automatically apply updates. That is a good question. I think that's behavior. For some reason, that behavior came from Crusaders.
Yeah, I feel like it's really old behavior that we just haven't kind of modernized in the game.
Was there a reason you'd want to go up the levels and not add the upgrades? I mean, I can't think of a good reason. So
I think way back at the beginning when we kind of first released, we wanted players to have to kind of manually buy the upgrades or click the upgrades so they would see what they were getting. And I think that made sense back in the day when there were just a few of them. But now, when you have to level up a character to level 2,000 or whatever, and there's hundreds and hundreds of upgrades, like no one's going to be paying attention to those. Like,
yeah.
You've seen them all at that point. You don't care if you're getting a +100% damage or a +200% damage. So, yeah, I think that's probably something we can maybe
there's
address.
A lot of questions we flagged.
That's true. Peter's not going to like us after this.
No, I saw a comment in there. Peter's getting a lot of work today.
Yeah, Jeebus. Let's see, in the alignment one, we answered that. There's a couple more down here that I think I highlighted, and here's one for you.
All right, when you highlighted, go for it.
This one here.
Shoot, doesn't matter to me.
I didn't highlight this one, did I? Okay. From I'm Korvac asks, do you have any insight into when/if the Epic Game Store version of the game will be available on Mac and or in GeForce Now?
So
GeForce Now.
At the moment, we don't have plans to release an Epic Games Mac client, just because there were some technical hurdles we ran into, and they're not ones that we've had a chance to look into more deeply, and because we actually don't have, we're not a Mac studio, unfortunately, and we don't have someone who knows the ins and outs on that particular one, which was hooking up the Epic library to Mac Unity. It was a little bit more complicated than some of the other ones, and it was a tricky bit for the Windows one, but we do have people who know that in and out, but not the Mac side. So for now, we're going to leave the Mac one off Epic. If you want to play on Mac, there's the Steam version and, of course, the WebGL version. So you do have options, just not the Epic one. And then as far as GeForce Now goes, didn't we end up in there and then we got pulled out for some reason? I feel like that was something that actually happened. That was a...
It was like that thing where they kind of pulled in a whole bunch of games without really asking anyone, and then there was some flack on that, and I'm trying to... I do remember we went in there and then they removed us and we were like, why did you remove us? We were fine with that.
Yeah. There was a bunch of games that, of course, were very unhappy about that being included.
Yeah.
We weren't one of them. We thought, hey, whatever, works for us. But yeah, I don't think we've looked into any of that since then.
They're saying in the chat that the Steam version is on GeForce Now, but the Epic Game Store version isn't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if that's something we have to go and like manually apply.
Yeah, this is the first time I'd
even
thought about it and thought about GeForce Now. I forgot it was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Clive who did that last time, so I'll have to. Yeah, I'm not sure what's involved in getting on there, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think for now, I'm a Corvic. Your best bet is to play the Steam client for that one, if you're on Mac. Okay,
I think we've got like one more question, maybe.
Definitely running up against the clock. You have a preference for 27 or 30, Justin?
I mean, they're both pretty straightforward.
All right, both of them that is then. Hollow Leviathan is asking, many events take place in Waterdeep, but do not trigger Okura's Defender of Waterdeep upgrade. They think they should.
Yeah. So I was looking at this. I was pulling up the design for it and looking at it here, and I think it was purposefully done to be the Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign only. And I think the reason for that is because it just becomes a little bit more complicated to flag what adventures are available for it if we try and just make it anything that takes place in Waterdeep or anything that like starts in Waterdeep or anything like that. Because the actual Waterdeep starting location on the world map is different from the Waterdeep starting locations in Dragon Heist, and I think we just did that in order to make it a little bit more straightforward. So I don't think there's any plans to change that right now.
All right, and question 30 from Smaxor.
Smaxor.
Yeah.
Yes, Smaxor.
It looks like that. Anyway, they would like to know, is there a way to get the event achievements for champions that have been retired? Like for the current event, I can't see how I can get Deacon's achievement. And they're saying they acquired Deacon from a time gate recently.
Yeah, I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but in the achievement dialogue, the achievements should show up there once you've recruited the champion. But if I'm wrong about that, then let me know, and that's something we can look into. It feels like they should show up in the achievements dialogue, and you should be able to find it in there and figure out what you need to do.
Okay. Looks like we are just out of time, so I think that's the last question.
Fantastic. So yeah, if we didn't get to your question, don't worry, you will have another opportunity. We'll be back live again at this same time next week.
We're actually going to be live next week, and we've been skipping every other week for some reason.
We have been skipping. Stupid Canada Day. Stupid day off. Anyway, before we sign off, we would like to thank our tireless mods. Today it was Sasha. Thanks, Sasha.
And of course, all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking such wonderful questions, and enjoying the game. Without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
Did you say screen?
Watching the screen. Yep.
Anyway, we like what we do.
We do.
We do. Anyway.
That's it. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Bye.
So did either of those weekly chess codes actually work?
I don't know. I mean, the not a chess code one, was that even supposed to work?
I think that was the joke.
Oh, I'm so slow.